What's a bottom feeder like you doing in my place? Those were the first words my own son said to me when I arrived at my mountain lodge for Thanksgiving weekend. Marcus was standing in the doorway, blocking my entry like I was some kind of intruder. Behind him, I could see his wife's entire family. 6 people I didn't recognize living in the lodge I built with my own hands 15 years ago. When I tried to use my key, it wouldn't work. They'd changed the locks on my own property. My name is Cameron Palmer. I'm 68 years old. And that day, I learned that my son had been telling everyone I'd given him my $340,000 mountain retreat. The problem was I'd never given him anything. And when I pulled out the deed that proved I still owned every board and stone of that place, my ungrateful family discovered what happens when you disrespect the man whose name is on the title. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. This is a story about property rights, family boundaries, and why you should never underestimate a man who builds things with his own hands. I built this place with my own hands 15 years ago. Let me back up and tell you why that lodge meant everything to me, and how a temporary favor turned into the biggest betrayal of my life. My name is Cameron Palmer, and I'm a 68-year-old retired contractor from Colorado. In 2008, after my wife Rebecca died from cancer, I was lost. We'd been married 35 years, and suddenly I was alone with a 15-year-old son who was struggling with his own grief. I needed a project, something to keep my hands busy and give Marcus and me a place to heal. So I bought 40 acres of mountain land 3 hours outside Denver. Cost me $85,000 just for the raw land. Then I spent the next 3 years building our family lodge from the ground up. Every single board, every nail, every stone in that foundation was placed by these hands. Marcus would come up on weekends, and I'd teach him to use tools, to measure twice and cut once, to understand that building something real takes patience and sweat. The lodge wasn't huge, just 2,200 square feet, but it was solid. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a great room with a stone fireplace, and a wraparound deck that looked out over the valley. Total construction cost, $340,000. I have every receipt, every invoice, every permit filed in my name only. Cameron Palmer, sole owner. Those were some of the best years of my life. Marcus and I would drive up Friday nights, work on the lodge Saturday, then fish Sunday morning before heading home. He'd tell me about school, about girls, about his dreams. I thought I was building our family legacy. "Dad," he said one weekend when he was 18, "this place is going to be amazing when I inherit it someday." "When you earn it," I told him. "Nothing worth having comes easy." I thought I was teaching him responsibility. I thought I was showing him the value of hard work. The lodge was our sanctuary, our bond, our shared accomplishment. It was supposed to be ours forever. After Marcus graduated high school, he'd bring friends up, college buddies, then girlfriends. I loved seeing the place full of young people, hearing laughter echo off those walls I'd built. Every holiday, every summer vacation, every time life got stressful, we'd head to the lodge. It was home in a way our house in town never quite was. Then Marcus met Sarah. Don't get me wrong, I tried to like her. She seemed sweet enough at first. A 28-year-old teacher with 2 kids from a previous marriage. Marcus was head over heels, and if she made him happy, I was willing to welcome her into our family. When they got engaged, I even helped pay for the wedding. $38,000 for what Sarah called the perfect day. I wrote the check without complaint because that's what fathers do. But Sarah came with baggage. Her parents, Linda and Tom, had been unemployed for 2 years. Her brother Brian was a part-time mechanic with a gambling problem, and her 2 kids, ages 8 and 10, were used to getting whatever they wanted. Suddenly, every family gathering included 6 extra people, all of them looking at my lodge like it was some kind of vacation resort. "Dad," Marcus said to me 18 months ago, "Sarah's family is going through a rough patch. Her dad's business failed, and they're about to lose their apartment. Could they stay at the lodge for a few weeks, just until they get back on their feet?" I should have said no. I should have set boundaries right then. But Marcus was my son, and Sarah was going to be my daughter-in-law, and I believed in helping family. "Just temporary," I said. a few weeks to get sorted out. You're the best, Dad. I promise it'll just be until they find something permanent. That was 8 months ago. And now I was standing in my own driveway, being called a bottom feeder by my own son, unable to enter the lodge I'd built with my own hands. But there was something they didn't know about this bottom feeder. I kept all my important documents in a fireproof safe, and the deed to that lodge had never left my possession. The shock of being locked out of my own property was nothing compared to what I discovered next. They'd made themselves completely at home. I walked around to the back of the lodge, looking through windows like some kind of prowler. What I saw made my blood pressure spike. Linda was cooking in what she clearly considered her kitchen, wearing an apron that said Queen of the Mountain. Tom was reading my newspaper in my leather recliner. Brian had his feet up on my coffee table, drinking what looked like my beer. The two kids were playing video games on a TV I didn't recognize. This wasn't a temporary stay. This was a complete takeover. When I knocked on the back door, Linda opened it with an annoyed expression. "Cameron, you can't just show up unannounced," she said, like I was the one being unreasonable. "This is our home now." "Excuse me?" I kept my voice calm, but inside I was reeling. "This is my lodge, Linda." "Well, Marcus told us you gave it to him as a wedding gift, so technically it's our family home now." She actually used air quotes around technically. That's when Marcus appeared behind her. "Dad, we talked about this. You said Sarah and I could have the lodge." I stared at my son. In 33 years of raising him, I'd never heard him lie so boldly. "Son, I never said any such thing. I said Sarah's family could stay temporarily while they got back on their feet." "That's not how I remember it," Sarah chimed in, joining the group at the door. "You said we could make this our family home." Now I had 3 people rewriting history, and I was the outsider looking in at my own property. But they acted like I was the intruder. "Look, Dad," Marcus said, lowering his voice like he was talking to a child. "We've been living here for 8 months. We've been paying the utilities, maintaining the property, treating it like our home. We have rights now." "Rights? I built this place. I owned this place. I had never signed a single document transferring ownership to anyone." "What rights?" I asked. Brian appeared from the living room, still holding my beer. "Adverse possession, old man. Look it up. We've been living here long enough to claim legal ownership." The casual way he called me old man in my own lodge, drinking my beer, surrounded by my furniture, lit a fire in my chest. But I kept my voice steady. "Is that so?" "Yeah, that's so," Brian continued. "We've improved this place, paid the bills, made it our home. The law protects people like us from people like you." "People like me? I was the person who built every inch of this place." Sarah's father, Tom, joined the conversation. "Cameron, you're a good man, but you need to accept reality. This is legally ours now. Marcus has been handling everything, utilities, maintenance, property taxes. You don't have any claim here anymore." Property taxes. That was interesting because I'd been paying those taxes for 15 years straight, including this year, but I didn't mention that yet. "So you're telling me I no longer own the lodge I built?" I asked. "That's exactly what we're telling you," Linda said. "Maybe you're getting confused in your old age, but Marcus owns this property now. We're his family, so we live here. You're welcome to visit, but you need to call first." Visit? My own property. "And if I don't accept this arrangement?" Marcus looked uncomfortable for the first time. "Dad, don't make this difficult. We're trying to be nice about it, but if you keep insisting this place is yours, we might have to get lawyers involved." Lawyers? They were threatening me with lawyers over my own property. "I see," I said. "Well, I certainly don't want any legal trouble." The group relaxed, thinking they'd won. "Exactly," Sarah said. "We're all family here. No need for drama." "You're right," I agreed. "No drama at all." I turned to walk back to my truck, and I heard Brian laugh behind me. Crazy old coot actually thought he still owned this place. More laughter from the group as I got in my truck and drove away. That's when I realized what they'd been telling people. For 8 months, they'd been living in my lodge, telling neighbors and friends that I'd given them the property. They'd been playing house with my life's work, and the whole community thought I was just a generous old man who'd signed over his mountain retreat to his son. But they'd made one critical error. They'd confused permission to stay with ownership transfer, and they'd forgotten that I was a contractor who kept meticulous records of everything I'd ever built or bought. That night, I opened my safe. The next morning, I decided to try a different approach. Maybe there'd been a misunderstanding. Maybe if I talked to Marcus privately, man to man, we could sort this out without involving lawyers or sheriffs. I still believed my son had just gotten confused about our arrangement. I was wrong. When I knocked on the front door, my front door, at 9 a.m., Brian answered. He was wearing pajama pants and a t-shirt, looking like he owned the place. "What do you want, Cameron?" "I'd like to speak with my son, please." "He's busy, and you need to stop showing up here unannounced. This is harassment." Harassment. At my own property. "I built this lodge, Brian. I think I have a right to speak with my son." "You built it, maybe, but you gave it away. That was your choice. Now it's ours, and we don't appreciate you bothering us." He actually started to close the door in my face. I put my hand against it, gently but firmly. "I never gave anything away. I let Sarah's family stay here temporarily." "That's not what Marcus told us, and frankly, your memory might not be what it used to be." He said this with a smirk that made my hands clench into fists. Just then, Marcus appeared behind Brian. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you, son, privately." Marcus looked annoyed. "We talked yesterday. I thought we settled this." "We didn't settle anything. You told me lies, and I want to understand why." "Lies?" Marcus's voice rose. "Dad, you're the one who's confused. You told us we could have this place. You said it was our family home now." When exactly did I say that?" Marcus stammered. We talked about it. You know, when we got married. I helped pay for your wedding. I never gave you my lodge." "Look, Dad," Sarah appeared now, joining the group at the door. "We understand you might be having some memory issues. Aging is hard, but you can't just come here making accusations." Memory issues? I was 68, not 88, and my memory was just fine. My memory is perfect. I remember every conversation we've had about this place. You asked if your family could stay temporarily. I said yes. That's it. "That's not how we remember it," Linda called from the kitchen. "You said we could make this our permanent home." Now I had 4 people against 1, all insisting I'd said things I never said. But I noticed something. They kept looking at each other when they talked, like they were coordinating their stories. "Show me the paperwork," I said. "What paperwork?" Marcus asked. "If I gave you this lodge, there would be paperwork. A deed transfer. Something legal." "We don't need paperwork," Brian said. "Family doesn't need paperwork." "Actually, family especially needs paperwork. Property transfers require legal documents." "Dad, you're being paranoid," Marcus said. "Why can't you just accept that this is our home now? We've been living here for months. We've made improvements. We've paid the bills." "What improvements?" "I converted your workshop into a bedroom for the kids," Brian said proudly. "Knocked out a wall, put in carpet, cost us $1,200. He destroyed my workshop, the place where I kept my tools, my workbench, my lumber, without an asking. You had no right to do that. We had every right. This is our house now." I felt that familiar rage building in my chest, but I kept my voice level. "Whose name is on the property tax bill?" Silence. "Whose name is on the deed?" More silence. "Whose name is on the original construction permits?" "Dad," Marcus said quietly, "stop making this complicated." "It's not complicated at all. Either you own this property legally or you don't. Which is it?" "We don't need your legal mumbo-jumbo," Linda snapped. "We live here. That makes it ours." "Actually, it doesn't." "Look, old man," Brian stepped forward, getting in my face. "You need to back off. We've been patient with your confusion, but you're starting to piss us off. This is our house. Accept it or get lost." Marcus didn't defend me. He just stood there while his wife's brother threatened me at my own front door. "Is that your position too, son? That I should get lost from the lodge I built?" Marcus looked uncomfortable, but he nodded. "Dad, if you can't accept that this is our home now, then maybe you shouldn't come around." "Our home." "That's right." I looked at my son. the boy I'd raised alone for 27 years, the young man I'd taught to fish and hunt and work with his hands in this very lodge, and I saw a stranger, someone who would side with people who'd known him for less than 2 years over the father who'd given him everything. I see. Good, Sarah said. We're glad you understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. I turned to walk back to my truck, then paused. Just out of curiosity, Marcus, when you tell people you own this lodge, do you mention that you've never made a single mortgage payment? Never paid property taxes? Never even seen the deed? We don't need to see the deed, he said. We live here. That's enough. Is it? I got in my truck and drove away for the second time, but this time I wasn't defeated. This time I was planning, because they'd made a crucial mistake. They'd assumed that living somewhere meant owning it. They'd confused temporary permission with permanent transfer, and they'd forgotten that I was a man who kept records of everything. How much had they changed? I was about to find out exactly what they thought they owned, and exactly what I could prove I still owned. That afternoon I made some calls. 3 days later, I had to find out just how deep this lie went. So I drove to Murphy's General Store, where I'd been buying supplies for 15 years. Dave Murphy had watched me build the lodge from the ground up. If anyone would set the record straight, it would be him. I was wrong about that too. Cameron, Dave called out when I walked in. How's retirement treating you? Can't complain, Dave, just picking up some supplies. For the lodge? Oh, wait, I forgot. That's Marcus's place now, isn't it? I stopped dead in the middle of the store. What? Marcus was in here last week buying materials for some project. He mentioned you'd given him the lodge as a wedding gift. That was awfully generous of you, Cameron. Most fathers don't give away property worth that much. Dave believed it. My friend of 15 years believed I'd given away my lodge. Dave, I never gave Marcus anything. He's staying there temporarily with his wife's family. Dave looked confused. That's not what he told me. He said you'd signed the place over to him, that it was his family home now. Even showed me the new family photos they put up. Family photos. In my lodge. He showed you photos? Yeah, on his phone. The whole family gathered around your fireplace. His wife's parents, her brother, the kids. Looked like they'd really settled in nice. You did a good thing, Cameron, giving them that place to raise their family. I realized that Marcus had been actively telling people I'd given him the lodge, not just living there quietly, actively spreading the story that it was his property now. Dave, I built that lodge myself. It's still in my name. Well, sure, I know you built it, but Marcus said you'd transferred ownership to him. Legal and everything. Legal. There was that word again. I bought my supplies and left, but I could see Dave watching me with concern, like maybe I was getting confused. In my old age. The next stop was even worse. I drove to the post office where Sally Henderson had been working for 20 years. She knew everyone's business in our small mountain community. Oh, Cameron, she said when she saw me, I heard about your generous gift to Marcus. The whole town's talking about how you gave him that beautiful lodge. The whole town. Sally, what exactly are people saying? Well, Marcus's mother-in-law was in here yesterday, mailing some packages to their new permanent address, your lodge address. She was telling everyone how grateful the family was, that you'd given them such a wonderful place to live. Said they'd finally found their forever home. Their forever home, my lodge. She said Marcus had been taking care of the property for months now, paying all the bills, making improvements, really stepping up as the new owner. New owner. Did she show you any paperwork? Any documents? Sally looked confused. Why would she need paperwork? She's family, isn't she? Besides, she had mail being delivered there, utility bills in Marcus's name. Looked pretty official to me. I realized they'd been very smart about this. They'd established what looked like ownership. Utility bills, mail delivery, telling everyone they lived there permanently. To the casual observer, they looked like the rightful occupants. But I needed to know how far this had spread. I drove to the hardware store where I'd bought materials for the lodge construction. Tom Bradley, the owner, had sold me thousands of dollars worth of supplies over the years. Cameron, good to see you. How's the family? Fine, Tom, just fine. I bet you're proud of Marcus, taking over that lodge like he has. Heard he's really making it his own place. What do you mean? Well, he was in here 2 weeks ago buying supplies to renovate the workshop area. Said he was converting it into a bedroom for the kids. Seemed real excited about making the place work for his new family. My workshop, the space where I'd taught Marcus to use tools, where we'd built furniture together, where I kept all my equipment. He destroyed my workshop? Tom laughed. Well, I wouldn't say destroyed, more like repurposed. That's what happens when you pass property down to the next generation. They make it their own. Pass property down. Tom believed I'd given Marcus the lodge too. Tom, I didn't pass anything down. They're staying there temporarily. Tom's smile faded. Cameron, that's not what Marcus told me. He said you'd given him the lodge outright. Even mentioned something about adverse possession laws, how living there for months had given them legal rights. Adverse possession again. They'd been researching how to steal my property, and they'd been telling people about it. He's been saying that? Yeah, seemed pretty confident about the legal situation. Said even if there was any question about ownership, they'd been there long enough to claim the property under state law. I left the hardware store feeling like I was living in an alternate reality. My son and his wife's family hadn't just taken over my lodge. They'd convinced an entire community that I'd given it to them willingly. They were making me look senile, like a confused old man who couldn't remember signing over his own property. That night, I opened my safe and pulled out a manila folder I hadn't touched in years. Inside were documents that would change everything. Because here's what they'd forgotten about this bottom feeder. I kept records of everything I'd ever built, bought, or owned. And the deed to that lodge had never left my possession. I spread the documents across my kitchen table like a general planning a campaign. Because that's exactly what this had become. A battle for my own property, and I intended to win it. First document. Original deed, dated March 15th, 2008. Purchaser, Cameron Palmer. Current owner, Cameron Palmer. No co-owners, no transfers, no amendments. Just my name in black and white, legally recorded with the county clerk's office. Second document. Property tax records for the last 15 years. Every single payment made by Cameron Palmer, including this year's payment, which I'd made just 3 months ago while Marcus's family was living there rent-free. Third document. Construction permits for the lodge, issued to Cameron Palmer. Inspections passed under Cameron Palmer's name. Certificate of occupancy issued to Cameron Palmer. I had more paper proof of ownership than most people keep for their cars, but I needed to understand exactly what legal position I was in. So I fired up my laptop and started researching Colorado property law. Adverse possession, the concept Brian had mentioned so confidently, requires continuous occupation for 18 years in Colorado. 18 years. Marcus's family had been there for 8 months. Squatters' rights also required much longer occupation and only applied when the true owner was absent. I'd been visiting regularly until they changed the locks. Tenants' rights? They were never tenants. They never signed a lease, never paid rent, never had any formal agreement beyond my verbal permission to stay temporarily. What they were, legally speaking, was trespassers. Trespassers I'd initially allowed, but trespassers nonetheless once they refused to leave and claimed ownership. I had absolute legal authority to remove them from my property. The next morning I called Janet Morrison, the property attorney who'd handled my will and estate planning for years. Cameron, good to hear from you. What can I do for you? I explained the situation, my son's family claiming ownership of my lodge, changing locks, telling the community I'd given them the property. Let me get this straight, Janet said. You gave them permission to stay temporarily, and now they're claiming you gave them ownership? That's correct. And you never signed any transfer documents? Never filed any new deeds? Never. Do you have the original deed? Right here in front of me. Cameron, this is actually pretty straightforward legally. They have no claim to your property whatsoever. The fact that they're family doesn't change property law. So what are my options? Well, since they're claiming ownership rather than just refusing to leave, this goes beyond a simple eviction. You need to serve them with a formal notice to quit. Basically a legal document that tells them they're trespassing and have 30 days to vacate. 30 days seemed generous, considering they'd been lying to my face for months. What if they refuse? Then we file an unlawful detainer lawsuit. The court will order them removed, and the sheriff will enforce it. How long does that take? In Colorado, if the property ownership is clear, which it is in your case, usually about 6 weeks from filing to enforcement. But Cameron, given that this is family, you might want to try talking to them first. I'd tried talking to them. They'd called me confused and threatened to call lawyers on me. Janet, they've been telling the whole community that I gave them the property. They've damaged my workshop, changed my locks, and basically stolen my lodge. I'm past the talking stage. I understand. In that case, I can have a notice to quit prepared by tomorrow morning. Certified mail and personal service. Do it. Cameron, are you sure? Once we start formal legal action, this is going to get uncomfortable for everyone involved. I thought about Brian drinking my beer and calling me old man. I thought about Linda wearing that Queen of the Mountain apron in my kitchen. I thought about Marcus standing there while his wife's family disrespected me in my own home. Janet, they've made it clear they don't consider me family anymore, so I'm going to stop treating them like family and start treating them like what they are, trespassers on my property. All right then, the paperwork will be ready Monday morning. Monday morning, 3 days away. One more question, Janet. When the sheriff serves this notice, will it be public? Well, it's a legal document served at a residence where multiple people live, so yes, there will be witnesses. Perfect. If they wanted to play this game publicly, embarrassing me in front of the whole community, then they could face the consequences publicly too. The paperwork would be ready Monday morning. They had no idea what was coming. Monday morning arrived like Christmas, and Judgment Day rolled into one. I met Janet at her office at 8 a.m. to review the documents that would change everything. 30-day notice to quit, Janet explained, sliding the papers across her desk. This formally notifies them that they are unlawfully occupying your property and must vacate within 30 days. The legal language was beautiful in its simplicity. No emotional appeals, no family drama, just cold, hard property law. The notice cites Colorado Revised Statutes, Section 1340-104, Unlawful Detainer of Real Property. It also references your ownership documentation, which I've attached copies of. I looked at the attached documents. My deed, property tax records, construction permits, an unbreakable paper trail of ownership spanning 15 years. How do we serve this? 2 ways. Certified mail, which creates a postal record, and personal service by a sheriff's deputy, which ensures they can't claim they never received it. A sheriff's deputy. This was about to get very official, very quickly. I've already contacted the Mesa County Sheriff's Department. Deputy Williams will serve the notice this afternoon at 2 p.m. Perfect timing. Marcus would be home from work, and Sarah's whole family would be there to witness their legal reckoning. At 1:45 p.m., I met Deputy Williams in the parking area near my lodge. He was a professional, middle-aged man who'd reviewed the case file during his drive up. Mr. Palmer, I understand this is a family situation, but legally it's straightforward. You own the property, they don't have a lease, and they're refusing to leave. That makes them trespassers. That's correct? I'll serve the notice and explain their legal obligation to vacate. After that, if they refuse to leave within 30 days, you can file for formal eviction and we'll enforce it. We walked up to the front door of my lodge, my front door, and Deputy Williams knocked. Marcus opened the door, saw the uniform, and went pale. Marcus Palmer? Yes? I'm Deputy Williams, Mesa County Sheriff's Department. I have a legal notice for you and all occupants of this property. What kind of notice? A 30-day notice to quit. You and your family are required to vacate these premises within 30 days. I watched my son's face as he took the papers. Behind him, I could see Sarah and her family gathering, drawn by the sight of a sheriff's deputy at the door. I don't understand, Marcus said. This is our home. According to the property records, this home belongs to Cameron Palmer, Deputy Williams said, consulting his paperwork. Are you Cameron Palmer? No, I'm his son. And do you have any legal documentation showing that Cameron Palmer transferred ownership of this property to you? No, but Then you are occupying his property without permission, which makes you trespassers. This notice gives you 30 days to leave voluntarily. Brian pushed forward from the back of the group. This is bullshit. We have rights. Deputy Williams looked at Brian with the flat, professional stare that only cops can master. Sir, what rights are you referring to? Adverse possession. We've been living here long enough to claim legal ownership. Adverse possession in Colorado requires 18 years of continuous occupation. How long have you lived here? 8 months. 8 months gives you no legal rights to this property whatsoever. I watched Brian's confidence crumble in real time. All his internet research, all his confident legal talk, reduced to nothing by a deputy who actually knew the law. Sarah's mother, Linda, pushed forward now. But Marcus owns this place. His father gave it to him. Deputy Williams turned to me. Mr. Palmer, did you transfer ownership of this property to your son? No, I did not. Do you have documentation proving your ownership? I handed him the deed. He examined it briefly, then looked back at the family. This deed shows Cameron Palmer as the sole owner, purchased in 2008. I see no transfer documents, no new deeds, nothing indicating a change of ownership. But we've been paying utilities, Sarah said desperately. Ma'am, paying utilities doesn't give you ownership rights. Tenants pay utilities too, but they don't own the property. We're not tenants, Marcus protested. We're family. Are you Cameron Palmer's tenants with a signed lease agreement? No. Then what legal right do you have to occupy his property? Silence. Complete, total silence. Deputy Williams held up the notice to quit. This document requires all occupants to vacate the premises within 30 days. If you refuse, Mr. Palmer can file for formal eviction, and this department will enforce the court order. What does that mean? Sarah asked quietly. It means we'll physically remove you and your belongings from the property. Tom, Sarah's father, finally found his voice. Officer, where are we supposed to go? Sir, that's not a legal matter. That's a personal matter you'll need to figure out. But you cannot remain on property you don't own without the owner's permission. I'm his son, Marcus said, his voice rising. Doesn't that count for something? Deputy Williams looked at Marcus with what might have been sympathy. Son, family relationships don't override property law. If your father doesn't want you living in his house, you can't stay there. It's that simple. I spoke for the first time since we'd arrived. Marcus, you had my permission to stay temporarily. You chose to turn that into a claim of ownership and treat me like a trespasser in my own home. That permission is now revoked. Dad, please, we can work this out. The time for working things out was before you changed my locks and told the community you owned my property. Deputy Williams stepped in. Folks, I need to ask you to accept a service of this document. Your 30 days starts today. Marcus took the papers with shaking hands. Behind him, I could see two neighbors who'd come out to see why a sheriff's car was parked at the lodge. The same neighbors who'd believed Marcus owned the place. Any questions about your legal obligations? Deputy Williams asked. What if we don't leave? Brian asked. Then Mr. Palmer files for eviction, we get a court order, and I come back with a moving truck. Your belongings get put in storage, and you get escorted off the property. It's your choice whether this happens easy or hard. Brian looked like he wanted to say something else, but Linda grabbed his arm. Deputy Williams handed Marcus a business card. If you have questions about the legal process, contact the number on this card. Mr. Palmer, do you need anything else from me today? No, Deputy. Thank you for your professionalism. Just doing my job, sir. Folks, 30 days from today is December 18th. I strongly encourage you to be gone by then. As we walked back to our vehicles, I could hear urgent, panicked conversation coming from inside the lodge. Reality was finally hitting them. They didn't own anything. They had no legal rights, and they had 30 days to find somewhere else to live. Deputy Williams turned to me before getting in his patrol car. Mr. Palmer, in my experience, family situations like this rarely end well. Are you sure you want to go through with this? I looked back at the lodge I'd built with my own hands, where people who'd called me a bottom feeder were now frantically discussing their legal options. Deputy, I gave them 8 months of free housing and asked for nothing but basic respect. They chose to steal my property and humiliate me instead. I'm sure. He nodded. 30 days, then. If they're still here on December 19th, call this number and we'll finish this. But they still didn't believe I'd go through with it. The phone calls started that same evening. Dad, please, we need to talk. Marcus sounded different now. The confident, dismissive tone was gone, replaced by something I hadn't heard from him in years. Desperation. We can talk, son, but the legal notice stands. Dad, you can't be serious about this. We're your family. Family doesn't change locks on my property and call me a bottom feeder. Brian was out of line, I know that. But Dad, we have nowhere to go. Sarah's kids, they're settled in school up here. You can't just throw children out on the street. Children. Now he was playing the children card. Marcus, I didn't throw anyone onto the street. I gave Sarah's family 8 months of free housing. They chose to turn that generosity into a theft attempt. It wasn't theft. We thought... You thought what? That you could lie to the whole community about owning my property and I'd just accept it? Silence on the other end of the line. Dad, what do you want from us? I want you to be out of my lodge in 30 days, like the legal notice says. And then what? You'll just live there alone? That's my decision to make. It's my property. The calls continued for 3 days. Sometimes it was Marcus, sometimes Sarah, once even Linda trying to negotiate. Each conversation followed the same pattern: desperation, guilt trips, promises to do better, and finally anger when I didn't budge. You're destroying your own family over a stupid house, Sarah screamed during one particularly heated call. I'm not destroying anything, I replied calmly. You destroyed it when you decided to steal from me. On day 4, Marcus showed up at my house. I opened the door to find my son standing on my porch, looking like he'd aged 5 years in 5 days. His eyes were red, his clothes wrinkled, and he had the defeated posture of a man watching his world collapse. Dad, please, just give us more time. More time for what? To find somewhere else to live. To get the kids settled. To figure out how to afford first month's rent and deposits when we've been living rent-free. You've had 8 months to figure that out. We didn't know we'd need to. We thought the lodge was ours. Based on what? What made you think I'd given you a $340,000 property? Marcus couldn't answer that question because there was no good answer. They'd assumed, hoped, and convinced themselves that permission to stay meant ownership transfer. Dad, I'll kick out Sarah's family. Just let me and Sarah and the kids stay. This was interesting. Now he was willing to throw his wife's family under the bus to save himself. Too late for that, son. What do you mean, too late? You had a choice. When Brian called me a bottom feeder, when Linda treated me like hired help, when your in-laws disrespected me in my own home, you could have stood up for me. Instead, you joined them. I was trying to keep the peace. By sacrificing your father's dignity? He started crying then. My 33-year-old son standing on my porch, crying like the child I used to comfort after his mother died. Dad, I made a mistake. I know I made a mistake. But please don't destroy my marriage over it. I'm not destroying your marriage, Marcus. I'm reclaiming my property. Sarah's threatening to leave me if we end up homeless. Her family already blames me for this whole situation. If we get evicted, I'll lose everything. You should have thought about that before you chose them over me. I never chose them over you. Really? When Brian called me names in my own lodge, what did you do? Silence. When Linda treated me like a servant in my own kitchen, what did you say? More silence. When your whole new family laughed at me and told me I didn't belong in the house I built, whose side were you on? Dad, I was just trying not to make things worse. You made them worse by not defending me. You made them worse by letting strangers disrespect your father in his own home. You made them worse by claiming you owned something you never earned. Marcus wiped his eyes. So what now? You'll never forgive me? Forgiveness is different from consequences, son. I can forgive you and still protect my property. The kids at school are asking why there was a police car at our house. Sarah's crying every day. Her parents are looking at homeless shelters. Is that what you want? What I wanted was basic respect in my own home. What I got was theft and humiliation, so now you get consequences. Dad, please, I'm begging you. I looked at my son, the boy I'd raised alone, the young man I'd taught to build and fish and work. and I felt something break inside my chest, but not my resolve. Marcus, you made your choice 8 months ago when you decided to take my lodge without asking. You made it again when you let your in-laws disrespect me. You made it a third time when you told the community you owned my property. I didn't create this situation. You did. He walked back to his car with slumped shoulders, defeated. 26 days left. But they still didn't believe I'd actually go through with eviction. They thought family ties would save them in the end. They were wrong about that too. December 18th arrived like a long-promised reckoning. I met Deputy Williams at the bottom of my driveway at 8 a.m. sharp, along with a professional moving crew I'd hired to remove their belongings. The court had granted my eviction order 3 days earlier, and today was enforcement day. Any last-minute changes of heart? Deputy Williams asked. None. All right then, let's get this done. We drove up to the lodge, my lodge, where I could see movement in the windows. They were home. They were about to become former occupants. Deputy Williams knocked on the door with the particular authority that only comes with a court order and a badge. Marcus opened the door, looking haggard. Behind him, I could see boxes stacked in the living room. At least they'd started packing. Marcus Palmer? Yes. Deputy Williams, Mesa County Sheriff. I have a court order for eviction of all occupants from this property. You were served 30-day notice on November 18th. Your time is up. We need more time. Sir, the court order doesn't provide for extensions. You need to leave now, or we'll remove you. Where are we supposed to go? That's not my concern, sir. My concern is enforcing this court order. Sarah appeared behind Marcus, carrying one of her kids. Officer, we have children. You can't just throw children out with nowhere to go. Ma'am, you've had 30 days to make arrangements. The court order is final. I stepped forward. Marcus, are you going to leave voluntarily, or do we need to make this more difficult? Dad, please, just a few more days. The answer is no. Deputy Williams consulted his paperwork. Folks, I have a moving crew here to remove your belongings. You can supervise the process and ensure your items are handled properly, or you can leave now and pick them up from storage later. But you cannot remain on this property. This is insane, Brian muttered from the back of the room. What was that, sir? Deputy Williams asked. I said this is insane, evicting your own family over a house. Sir, family relationships don't change property law. Mr. Palmer owns this property, you don't, and you've been ordered to leave. Linda appeared, carrying suitcases. How long do we have? You have as long as it takes to get your belongings out and yourselves off the property. The moving crew will help with furniture and large items. The next 3 hours were surreal. I watched strangers, because that's what they'd made themselves, strangers, pack up their lives and remove them from my lodge. The same people who'd called me a bottom feeder, who'd claimed ownership of my property, who'd changed my locks and told my community they owned what I'd built. The moving crew was professional and efficient. Sarah's family stood around looking shell-shocked, while their furniture, their clothes, their children's toys were loaded into a truck bound for storage. Where does this stuff go? The crew chief asked me. Storage unit on Highway 50, Deputy Williams answered. They'll have 30 days to claim it and arrange payment. Marcus approached me while his in-laws were distracted with packing. Dad, I know you'll never forgive me for this. This isn't about forgiveness, son. This is about ownership and respect. I lost both, didn't I? You gave both up when you chose to lie about owning my property. What happens now? Now you find somewhere else to live. Now you explain to your wife's family how their free housing arrangement ended. Now you deal with the consequences of taking something that didn't belong to you. Sarah walked past carrying a box of dishes. My dishes, I realized. Dishes I'd bought for the lodge, now mixed in with their belongings. Sarah, I called out. She stopped, glaring at me with pure hatred. Those are my dishes. What? The blue ceramic dishes you're carrying, they belong to the lodge. They stay here. You're taking our dishes now? I'm taking my dishes back. Deputy Williams stepped over. What's the issue? Those dishes belong to the lodge. I bought them specifically for this property. Sarah set the box down hard, and I heard something break inside. Fine, take your precious dishes. The pettiness of the moment wasn't lost on me, but it illustrated the larger point. They'd been living with my property, eating off my dishes, sleeping in my beds, using my utilities, and calling it theirs. By noon, the lodge was empty except for the furniture I'd built and the fixtures I'd installed. The moving truck pulled away, followed by 2 cars packed with people who'd spent 8 months treating my generosity like their right. Marcus was the last to leave. "Dad, I want you to know that Sarah's probably going to leave me over this." "That's between you and Sarah. Her family blames me for losing their housing. They say I should have figured out a way to keep the lodge. There was no way to keep what was never yours. I know that now." "Do you? Or are you just saying that because you got caught?" He couldn't answer that question. "Son, you had everything. A wife, a family, a beautiful place to live rent-free. All you had to do was show basic respect to the man who provided it all." "I thought I was." "You thought allowing strangers to call me a bottom feeder in my own home was showing respect?" "They weren't strangers. They were family. They became your family. I was your family first, but you forgot that when it mattered." Marcus got in his car, packed with hastily stuffed suitcases and angry in-laws, and drove away from the lodge for the last time. I stood on the deck I'd built with my own hands, looking out over the valley I'd chosen for my sanctuary 15 years ago. The lodge was mine again, completely, legally, unquestionably mine, but I wasn't done yet. I walked through the empty rooms, assessing the damage. The workshop Brian had converted would need to be rebuilt. The walls they'd painted without asking would need to be repainted. The carpet they'd installed would need to be removed to restore the original hardwood floors. It would take weeks to undo the changes they'd made without permission. But I had time now. Time and peace, and the absolute certainty that no one would be calling me a bottom feeder in my own home anymore. I pulled out my phone and made a call. "Janet, it's Cameron. The eviction is complete." "How did it go?" "Exactly as the law required. They're gone, the property is secure, and I'm changing the locks again. Back to locks they don't have keys for." "Any final thoughts about reconciliation?" "Janet, they had 8 months to show gratitude and respect. They chose theft and insults instead. There's nothing to reconcile." "Fair enough. Anything else I can help you with?" "Actually, yes. I want to explore donating the lodge to a veterans organization. People who understand sacrifice and respect." "That's a wonderful idea, Cameron. I'll research some options." I hung up and walked back out onto the deck. For the first time in 8 months, my lodge was truly quiet. No one calling me names, no one claiming ownership of what I'd built, no one treating me like a guest in my own home. Just peace, and the satisfaction that comes from standing your ground when you're right. But my story wasn't finished yet. 6 months later, I was sitting on the deck of what was no longer my lodge, watching the sun set over the valley I'd loved for 15 years. The Colorado Veterans Foundation had officially taken ownership 3 weeks earlier. The ceremony was simple. Just me, Janet Morrison, and Robert Chen, the foundation director. We signed papers in the same living room where Marcus's family had once claimed ownership of my property. "Mr. Palmer," Robert had said, shaking my hand, "this gift will provide retreat space for veterans dealing with PTSD and combat trauma. You're literally giving them a place to heal." "They've earned it," I replied. "They understand sacrifice in ways my family never did." Now I was here for the final time, clearing out the last of my personal belongings. The foundation had asked me to stay for the transition, to help train their staff on the property's systems and maintenance needs. It felt good to see people who truly appreciated what they'd been given. A young veteran named Sarah, ironic name I know, approached me as I was loading my truck. "Mr. Palmer, I wanted to thank you again for this place. I've been here 3 days, and it's the first time I've slept through the night in 2 years." "You're welcome, Sarah. This lodge was built to be a sanctuary. It just took me a while to figure out who deserved to use it." She nodded toward the valley view. "Must be hard to give up something this beautiful." "Actually, it's easier than you'd think. The lodge was always meant to help people heal. For 15 years, I thought that meant my family. Turns out, it meant your family instead." That evening, I drove the 3 hours back to my small apartment in Denver. Simple, quiet, and completely mine. No one had ever called me a bottom feeder there. No one had ever changed my locks or claimed ownership of what I'd earned. My phone had been buzzing all day with calls from Marcus. I finally answered around 9 p.m. "Dad, I heard about the lodge. Good news travels fast." "Dad, you donated it? You gave away our family property to strangers?" Our family property. Even after everything, he still didn't understand. I gave away my property to people who appreciate it. "But Dad, that was supposed to be my inheritance." "Marcus, inheritances are earned through respect and loyalty. You chose to forfeit both." "Sarah left me." I wasn't surprised. When the free housing disappeared and the blame started flying, I'd expected their marriage wouldn't survive. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Her family blames me for losing the lodge. They say I should have fought harder to keep it." "You mean they think you should have fought harder to steal it?" "It wasn't stealing if you were going to give it to me anyway." "But I wasn't going to give it to you. I never said I would. You assumed, hoped, and convinced yourself, but I never promised you ownership." "What about everything you taught me up there? All those years of working together, building together?" "I was teaching you skills and values, not promising you real estate." "So what now? I've lost my wife, my home, my family. You lost those things when you chose to disrespect me in my own home. I didn't take them away, you gave them up." "Dad, I was hoping maybe we could start over. Maybe I could visit you sometimes, and we could rebuild our relationship." I considered this. Despite everything, Marcus was still my son, the boy I'd raised alone, the young man I'd loved unconditionally for 33 years. "Son, I'm not opposed to rebuilding our relationship, but it would have to be on very different terms than before." "What do you mean?" "It means you understand that respect isn't optional in my life anymore. It means you understand that I don't owe you anything beyond what I choose to give. It means you accept that trust, once broken, takes years to rebuild." "I understand." "Do you? Because 8 months ago you thought you understood what temporary housing meant, and you turned it into a theft attempt." Silence on the phone. "Marcus, I loved you enough to raise you alone for 27 years. I loved you enough to pay for your college, your wedding, and your dreams, but I won't love you enough to let you disrespect me again." "So what happens now?" "Now you prove that you've learned something from this experience. Now you show me through actions, not words, that you remember who raised you and how you're supposed to treat family." "And the lodge?" "The lodge is serving its purpose. Veterans who've sacrificed for their country are using it to heal and recover. It's doing more good now than it ever did when your wife's family was using it as a free vacation rental." "Dad, I'm sorry. For all of it." "I believe you are, son. But sorry doesn't undo the choices you made. Sorry doesn't erase 8 months of lies and disrespect. Sorry is just the starting point for rebuilding trust." "Will you ever forgive me?" "I already have forgiven you, Marcus. But forgiveness doesn't mean I'll ever put myself in a position to be disrespected like that again." After I hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment, looking at the photos I'd taken of the lodge over the years. 15 years of weekends, holidays, and memories. 15 years of believing I was building something for my family. I'd been right about building something for a family. I'd just been wrong about which family would appreciate it. The truth is, some people see generosity as weakness. They see kindness as permission to take more. They confuse what you give them with what they're owed. My son and his wife's family had spent 8 months treating my lodge like their personal property, telling everyone they owned what I'd built, and calling me a bottom feeder when I dared to question their authority. But here's what they forgot about bottom feeders. We don't build mountain lodges. We don't construct sanctuaries with our own hands. We don't work for 15 years to create something beautiful and lasting. Bottom feeders just take what other people build. I built that lodge. I owned that lodge. And when people who'd contributed nothing tried to claim ownership of my life's work, I reminded them, through perfectly legal means, that respect and gratitude aren't suggestions. They're requirements. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for ungrateful people is show them what life looks like without your generosity.